Okay, guys, we're going to try something a little bit more advanced today, but don't let that freak you out. We're talking about square roots today. So here's kind of a couple things that you really need to know. First of all, you need to understand what is a square root symbol. So that symbol is going to be right here. It pretty much looks like a division sign, but it has a little bit of extra craziness to it. It has this little bit of an extra tail right there. So think of how we do the box for division, and then all you got to do is add a little, I don't know, leg there, or like a little check mark. So that is the symbol for a square root. The meaning is simply this: it undoes the power of 2. Okay, it's the opposite of the power of 2, or it's the inverse of the power of 2. You're going to hear me say that quite a bit. Why do I need to know it? Because if we have exponents that have whole numbers, what happens if it's not a whole number? In other words, when I say the word exponent, what I'm talking about is this. What if I had 3 to the power of 2? Is it possible that someday I could have 3 to the power of a fraction, like 1/8, or 3 to the fraction, like 1/4? And so what this is taking that same idea, and the fraction that we're going to use is a very simple one. It's 1/2. So a square root is the same thing as saying to the power of 1/2. So here's the main idea here. We have to be able to do the inverse or the opposite of any operation in math. So when we are solving equations, we have to be able to undo something. So if there's add, we have to be able to subtract. If there's divide, we have to be able to multiply. So if there's a power of 2, we have to be able to undo that, which is what we call square root. So if we can say 3 to the power of 2, we also have to do the opposite. Hence we have the square root of 9. So square root is the inverse of the power of 2. So what it means is, if you focus your attention right over here, this is the important part. Okay, see how I have the square root, and I'm going to go ahead and click this so we can see it better. See how I have the square root of 3 right here? And that entire thing is to the power of 2. What that means is the square root and the power of 2 cancel. So my answer is just 3. Another way to think of it is this. What if I had 3 to the power of 2 and then I square root that? These are opposites. They cancel. So I have just the number 3. So essentially these are the opposites. The power of 2 and square root are opposites or inverses of one another. So this is the other really important thing that you probably need to know. And that simply is, if you ever have square root of 1, the answer is just 1. Think of it like this. What is 1 to the power of 2? Well, that means 1 times 1, and that equals 1. So when I say, okay, what is the square root of 1? That's like saying, okay, go this direction. Okay, what is the base or bottom number I'm going to get if I square root this? And the answer is 1. So another way you can think of that is that these are opposites of each other. So what is going backwards of a square root? It is going back to whatever the number was before you squared it. Okay, so if you are a little bit confused right now, that is okay. So bear with me here. So let's practice this for just a minute. If I asked you to do the square root of 9, I'm going to tell you right now that the answer is 3. Because I know 3 to the power of 2 means 3 times 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So what I'm asking you to do is, when I say the square root of 9, I'm asking you to say, what number did I multiply against itself to get to 9? Okay? So if I were to ask you, like this one, example 2 says the square root of 16, what number did I multiply against itself? What number did I times itself by to get to 16? So again, that would be 4. So if I did the square root of 16, I want to go backwards and say, okay, what number was it that I multiplied against itself twice? And it's 4. Same idea here. We have the square root of 25 on example 3. The square root of 25 is 5, because I understand in my brain that when I do square root of 5, it is going backwards and saying, okay, what number did I multiply by itself to get 25? And so the answer is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times 4 is 16. 3 times 3 is 9. And you can probably fill in some of the other blanks too. For example, what is 2 to the power of 2? I know that is 4. So I know, so I know that the square root of 4 is 2. These go back and forth. Okay, let's do one other one. What is the square root of 36? It would be 6, because I know 6 to the power of 2 is 36. You can see how these things just kind of trade places. One means the other, and that is what square roots are. Okay, so if I were to say, okay, just try this, just throw it out there for a minute. Okay, we're going to try number 4. What number times itself equals 144? I'm going to give you just a few seconds here to think about that. And same thing with number 5. What number times itself gets me 36? And then, of course, last, number 6. What number times itself gets me 4? So go ahead and pause the video, whoever's watching this. Go ahead and try it yourself. Just give it a shot. And we'll check back in here in just a few seconds. All right, so here's your answers. For number 4, you should have gotten 12. For number 5, you should have gotten 6. And again, for example 6, you should have gotten the number 2. And here's why. Because I know if I have 12 to the power of 2, that literally means 12 times 12. And I know that answer is 144. So to go in the backwards direction, if I want to go this direction from this number back to what I started with, literally just the number 12, it would be the square root. Okay, so same thing with example 5. I know that if I had 6 to the power of 2, that's saying 6 times 6, and that is 36. And if I ever want to go backwards, which is what square root actually is, I want to go this direction to go back to what I originally started with, I would say square root of 36. The base number that I multiplied by itself would be 6. And of course the last one, if I wasn't too hard to figure out, 2 to the power of 2 literally means 2 times 2, which is 4. So I know that if I were to do the square root of 4, it means I'm going back to the number I started with, 2. All right, so it's not too bad. It takes a little bit of thinking. It's just a weird way to think about stuff. At the end of the day, it's basically multiplication. It's the opposite. It's a way of moving backwards to what we had. So here's a question I know is burning in everyone's mind. What happens if the number isn't exactly a square root? Like, what if it's not 25? What if it's 26? What if it's 29? And no perfect number works out. Well, we can still round to get really close. For example, if I had the square root of 80, what times itself gets us really close? This is a question you just simply have to ask yourself. What times itself gets me really close to that? When you start thinking to yourself, well, I know that 10 times 10 is 100. That's a little too big. What about if I were to try 9 times 9? That would get me 81, and that is close. So all we have to say is it is about 9. It is about 9. We just estimated that because we know 9 times 9 is 81. And if we were to put this in a calculator, on any calculator we have on our smartphone, or our computer, whatever, you're going to see the decimal 8.9 something. You're going to be really, really close to 9. So we can say that's about 9. So when you do problems like this on your homework and you're not exactly sure how it works, what gets me close, that's what you're going to go with for your answer. And of course, the next and biggest burning question you're going to have is simply this. Well, what if there's a negative sign out front? Well, that's pretty easy. All it does is make your answer negative. So if I have a negative sign out in front of my square root, my answer is shockingly negative. And the last burning question of the day, of course, is what if there's a fraction inside my square root? What the heck do I do if this is what they show me? Well, it's pretty simple. All we do is we break them apart. We do them separately. We do square root of 49, of 49, and we do the square root of 100. So the square root of 49, I know is 7, because 7 times 7 gets me 49. So working backwards from that, I know that I will get the number 7 here. And then I know, as we talked about earlier, that 10 times 10 gets me exactly 100, so I have 10 here. And then all I gotta do is bring them back together, leave the numerator on top, the denominator on the bottom, and 7/10 will be my answer. So when you run into some of these on your homework, you just do them separately. So speaking of homework, or I should say practice, because it's not homework. It's not this time. Go ahead and practice this. Is on the back side of your worksheet. Good luck. Give this your best shot, and I'll talk to you about it more next time I see you.